Good morning or good afternoon from us.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Alice from Macmillan Education, and I'm joined with Judith, John, and Julia Sander, who I'm really hoping will join us for one second in a minute because she was here a second ago. So welcome to the webinar today. I hope everyone's looking forward to the session. And as I said, Judith and Julia are both our authors, and they've prepared a really informative and engaging session for you today, all on the new language arts series for Belize, My BZ language tree. So please, as I said, interact with the chat, ask any questions that you have. Judith and Julia can see those as they go along. And it'd be great if you say hello, let us know which district you're from, where you teach. And as I mentioned earlier, the session's recorded, so I'll be able to share this afterwards as well with you. And there'll also be a form at the end of the webinar if you've got any further questions that maybe haven't been covered in this session, or you'd like to chat to Judith and Julia about the in-person training in May. Please do enter those into the form that's at the end of the webinar, which will be shared with you. So I was going to pass over to both of you. I'm just going to go back into the backstage, Judith, sorry, and see where Judith is.
Yeah, she said she can't see enter. She can't see how to enter.
Let me find out for you.
Thanks. So hi everyone. I can see people are still adding notes to the chat. Wonderful to see so many people. Thank you very much for taking the time to participate. And Julia and I really hope you find it useful. I'll just introduce myself to start off because I'm very new to the project. My name is Judith John. I used to teach in the UK and started working in educational publishing in about 2011. Most of my work is freelance editing or writing. I also do some training and working with teachers on pedagogy or student-centered learning, or I've done some projects on working with teachers to develop their own series of textbooks. Oh, good. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Great. So I'm just introducing myself. I'll carry on and give you a bit of time, Julia.
Carry on.
That's okay. Thank you. So Julia and I have worked together for about 10 years now. I've worked on several series with her where she's produced the student books, and I've worked on the accompanying teacher guides and sometimes the workbooks, which have been great. I'm quite new to Macmillan. I started last year and I got the very exciting job of going out to Belize to meet with some teachers. Hi, if anyone's there who I met last year, hello. And we got to talk about the curriculum updates and gather information so that Julia and Leonie and I could make this the new series for Belize as specific to Belize as possible. I'm also writing the teacher guides right now for the middle division and helping Julia on some of the student books because Leonie had to take a step back from the project, unfortunately. But it's lovely to be involved. I look forward to meeting hopefully a lot of you in May when Julia and I come out to do some workshops.
Well, hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me because I had a little bit of trouble getting the presentation set up, but I hope we're okay now. Right, so I'm Julia Sander, and I have been working on Language Tree from the beginning. Leonie Bennett and I started talking about this more than 20 years ago, which seems quite incredible now. And we are now on the 3rd edition. You've got the new one, My BZ Language Tree, which is edition 3 of this series. And over the 20 years, we've had a wonderful time meeting some of you, coming out to the Caribbean, and also getting to know Belize, which has been a great privilege. My co-author, Leonie, has now got large family commitments as a grandmother, so she's had to step back a little bit from writing, but she has been very much involved in revising the Le division. So she's still there. Now, time passes, and we felt it was time for us to step back a little bit and to introduce some new authors, because frankly, Leonie and I are not actually getting any younger. Now, I've been working with Judith on other projects for around 10 years, and I felt she would be a very suitable person to take over from us. And we're both looking forward to coming to Belize in a few weeks' time. Hope to meet many of you and spend a bit more time presenting these new books. It's a very exciting project. I think we can probably go on to the next slide now. So Judith, would you like to say what we're going to do?
So if you haven't seen them, we wanted to show you the covers of the new edition of the Language Tree Lower Division books. So we think they look very exciting. And really, for me, it's been an exciting project all round to start with. So for today's seminar, our aims are to help you understand the main updates to the MyBeezy Language Tree series. Work on your understanding of how the revised textbooks deliver the competency-based curriculum, and help you use the Beezy Language Tree textbooks to deliver the curriculum in the classroom. So we'll start by going through the updates, take a break from us talking for you to ask any questions, and then we'll go on to work in a bit more detail about how you can deliver the competencies through the books and everything else that's set out in the curriculum.
Yeah, and as we speak, do pop questions down in the chat, and we'll try and address those as well as best we can. And we'll have a sort of roundup at the end, just to see where we're at the end of the session. So it'll be 2 parts with a little break in the middle to draw breath. Right, so what we're providing is student books and workbooks. This is the lower division. We've got student books and workbooks at each of the 3 levels, and we've got a teacher's guide, which is going to be online. I should say that this is very much a language arts course. It's looking about developing reading skills, comprehension skills, writing skills, and of course, developing competencies. It doesn't address directly the phonic aspect of your curriculum. That you already cover in your sounds and letters, which is a Belize specific book. The one exception to that is in Infant 1, because we do cover quite a lot of phonic practice in the workbook. Right, so I'm going to start by looking at the new features in MyBeezy Language Tree. But before I do that, I'd just like to talk briefly about what has been the philosophy of Language Tree right from the outset. It looks quite different from how it looked when we first produced it, but the core element is that it is an integrated skills course, in which case every unit in the book integrates the skills of reading, writing, listening and speaking, and language, grammar and vocabulary, and they're all linked together so that they feed on one another. The reading comprehension passage will provide vocabulary and grammatical structures and will help to develop the writing skills, which I think is reassuring. I believe most of you are familiar with the Language Tree, and I think that in Belize up till now, you've been using the 2nd edition because you've been waiting for our 3rd edition to appear, and now it is here. So it will look familiar to you. It starts off with a reading comprehension, followed by some listening and speaking work, and then we move into language and vocabulary, finally getting onto a writing task. So that structure has been maintained, but there are some changes. The other point which we've had strongly in Language Tree is that it's very much rooted in the local area, in the Caribbean, and I'm very pleased to say that the new Beezy Language Tree has very much a focus on Belize. Sometimes you look at the books and you think they're all about other parts of the Caribbean, but this is about Belize. That's something we hope you'll be very pleased about. So what's new? Well, we've adapted it for the new competency-based curriculum, which you're introducing in your schools. We're going to do quite a big section on competencies, so I won't go any further on that at this stage, but it's coming in later. We include all the learning outcomes that are specified in the new curriculum. However, and there is a however here, we're not able to present them in the same order as you've got in your document, which is, you have a document called Learning Outcomes by Cycles. We were not able to deliver in quite the same order. So for example, in Standard 1, in Belize Cycle 1, you've got a learning outcome which is use and apply an apostrophe in common contractions, and that's included in Cycle 1. Now in Language Tree, we cover the same point, but it's Unit 13 of the book, which corresponds to your Cycle 3. It wasn't really possible to follow the order without completely pulling the books apart and restructuring them. But you can rest assured that the learning outcomes will be covered by the end of the book. And Judith has been preparing a table which will appear in the teacher's book, which shows exactly where each of the learning outcomes required are covered. Now, one new feature in your curriculum is a very much increased emphasis on speaking and listening, particularly listening. And we have included listening texts, that's really new, to be read by the teacher. And we also have some lovely audios available online. So that's all available. We also include some suggestions for transitioning from your home language to standard English, which is something of a problem because I believe Belize has not just one home language amongst students, but several, and you might even have several within the same classroom. And we also provide lists of high-frequency words for the students to learn because we noticed that is in your new curriculum. So I believe the next slide is going to give you an example of listening. This is what you have. This is from Infant 1, and it's a set of pictures showing what happens when somebody gets up in the morning and the different things they do. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll find the text for the listening, which is included in the back of the student book. Now, if I press on here, I hope and pray, it looks like we're going to be able to listen to that. And it's also followed by a little song that teachers can use before it goes. Well, here we go, hopefully.
Unit 3, in the morning. This is what Tom told his teacher.
Number 1, on school days, Mommy wakes me up. I wake up at 7 o'clock. Number 2, I go into the bathroom and I wash my face. Number 3, then I get dressed. I sit on the bed to put my socks on. Mommy gets cross if I put my shoes on the bed. Number 4, I go downstairs and I have breakfast with Mommy. Kim does not like waking up and Daddy has to keep telling her to hurry up. They come down later and have to eat their breakfast quickly. Number 5, before I go to school, I brush my teeth. Number 6, I put all my things in my backpack and then I walk to school with Daddy. Mommy and Kim are always behind us because Kim is so slow. This is the way I get out of bed, get out of bed, get out of bed. This is the way I get out of bed early in the morning. This is the way I wash my face, wash my face, wash my face. This is the way I wash my face early in the morning. This is the way I put on my clothes, put on my clothes, put on my clothes. This is the way I put on my clothes early in the morning. This is the way I have my breakfast, have my breakfast, have my breakfast. This is the way I have my breakfast early in the morning. This is the way I brush my teeth, brush my teeth, brush my teeth. This is the way I brush my teeth early in the morning. This is the way I go to school, go to school, go to school. This is the way I go to school early in the morning.
Right, well, that's what you can do. Lovely, lovely little song at the end, which I'm sure your children are going to enjoy singing. And you can do a lot of work around these pages. You probably start by looking at the pictures and talking to your class and asking them what they can see in the pictures. And then you can play them the listening or read it out to them and focus on those words like wake up, wash my face, get dressed. And then finally, you can get your students to say what they do in the mornings and to compare with what Tom does. So it can be exploited in quite a few different ways.
Unit 3, in the...
Oh, hang on, it's gone. I didn't want me to play that again. Right, so talking about the transition from the home language, you're probably familiar with having teaching notes on the bottom of the pages in the student's book. these are for the teachers, and we've got a system of icons. You'll see HL, which is home language, and obviously there's further down we've got a teacher with you know, a teacher's head. So it's always very difficult, I think, to transition from home language, especially when you have so many different languages. But when you're working with very young children, we recommend that when they do their pair work or their role play, you can allow them to talk in their home language, and you can encourage them to speak clearly so others can understand them, and talk about the sequence of events. And then finally, when they come to present to the class, you can encourage them to use standard English as far as possible. So the second example here is an extension exercise to have students ask questions about a text. And if they ask questions in their home language, you can praise the content to encourage them, but you can model or show them how to ask the same question in standard English. And then when we come on to a standard 1 note, we've got something about a language point here, that subject-verb agreement, it can be tricky to grasp, and the rules can be different in their home language. So one suggestion is to ask them how they would say a sentence like, she plays netball. How would you say it in your home language? Is it different? If so, in what way is it different? Now here's an example of the high frequency words. This is from standard 1, and these are words which can't really be they can't be decoded, so you've got to learn to sight read them, and they all occur in the reading texts. So you'll have this with at each level. Obviously with the infant 1, there are not as many words as you've got here.
Sorry to interrupt you, Julia. I've just noticed on the Q&A at the bottom, it says some teachers aren't able to access the webinar. It says tickets are sold out. I don't know if you can suggest anything, Alice.
I'll see what I can do, but there should be plenty of space. We've got 400 attendees at the minute. We're able to have at least 500, so I'll look at that to see what's going on. Sorry about that for anyone that can pass on the message. I'll work on it to see if we can try and get everyone in at the minute.
Thanks.
Right, it's always good to keep an eye on the chat, isn't it? Right, well, we actually got so many new features. We've had to go on to 2 slides about them, and I'm going to show you examples as far as I possibly can of these things that obviously things have changed a lot since we first started writing over 20 years ago, and some themes have become more important, particularly the theme of the environment and information technology. So we do include those, and we've done some changes. And we've also made sure that for Belize, we have more texts which are relevant to Belize, which include artwork and photos. And we also attempt as far as possible to reflect the different ethnicities in Belize. We give guidance on how to cover the competencies, and we also have a Now I Can page with most of the units, which give you opportunities for formative assessment, and then the online teacher's guide. So we're going to look at an example of each one of those. So we'll move on. So an environmental topic, how to grow beans on the left, that is an infant 1 topic. And obviously it's taken at a very simple level for children at that age, but it's talking about how to grow food, and will lead into a discussion of what's necessary to grow plants and how important it is to grow food. And on the right-hand side, we've got a page from infant 2, and this talks about animals and plants, what they need and how they're interrelated, and how, out of that will come how important it is to protect animals and to protect the environment. And you'll notice there straight away, we've got very much Belize, so they've got the toucan, Belize photos. And here are some more photos about Belize. We've got the toucan, We've got a tapir. We got quite fond of tapirs, and there's quite a bit about them in the books, and a sea turtle. Here's another point in the teacher's notes. You'll see that we've got an orange icon, which is C2 or C1 or C1, C5. And these are pointers where you can use an activity to develop a competency. So C2, which is the first one, is the emotional intelligence and communication skills. And we ask the question, are your students sensitive to how others feel? Are they able to put themselves in their place? This is about a story. So can your students relate to the characters in the story and understand their feelings? Now, the second extract, we've got 2 competencies. This is just from infant 1, and even at that very early level, you can still use activities to develop competences. C1, you'll probably remember, is the appreciation of sacred nature of the human person and character development. And C5 is multicultural appreciation. So we're looking at different types of families and helping students to understand that there are lots of different sorts of families, and that people have different backgrounds and they're all valuable and they're all special. And then the third extract shows that it's a standard 1 activity based on a writing activity. And you can use this activity to develop competency 3, which is innovative and critical thinking, where students have to suggest ideas of their own for the story. So this is showing you how you can use activities which are in the book, these are not the only ones, these are just examples, but you can develop competencies through looking at these activities. Now, the Now I Can page, the first one on the left is from infant 1, and the one on the right is from the standard 1. And in infant 1 and infant 2, every 3 or 4 units, you have a Now I Can page, where you can just recap quickly what students have been doing, and this will give you an opportunity to see how well they're doing and if any remedial action you might need to take. And it's the same for standard 1, except in standard 1 we've got a Now I Can after each unit, because the students are covering a bit more ground there, and you can either work through those with your whole class, or depending on how well your students are doing, they can do it on their own. And it enables you to assess how well your students are doing and what you need to do to, if you need to do anything to any revision at all. And just looking at these pictures here, you can see that we've got quite a variety of different ethnicities portrayed among the children. And so as best we can, we've tried to reflect what society you might find in Belize. Now, we're going now to move over to Judith, because she's been doing the teacher's guides, and I know we've got some examples from the teacher's guides for you to look at.
Thanks, Julia. And just to say good morning to everyone who's joined recently. It's really amazing to see so many of you. So thank you for taking the time. There are online teacher guides available for each of the lower division grades. There will be later ones available for middle and upper divisions. And these are designed to support you in delivering the content of the curriculum through the student books and the workbooks. If any of you have used previous editions of the Language Arts series, you may be familiar with different versions of the teacher guides. These have been completely rewritten for the new BZ curriculum. However, they will be familiar to you. We've kept a lot of the features because they worked really well, but we've also added some new features which I'll be going through shortly. So looking at this slide, thank you, Julia. Before we get to the unit contents, there'd be an introduction in all the teacher guides, which gives you a bit more information on the new or updated features. There'll also be a scope and sequence, which sets out all of the outcomes from the curriculum to follow the scope and sequence in the student book. But this also maps includes the codes from the Belize curriculum and maps them out, as Julia mentioned, so that you can cross-reference coverage more easily. And what you're looking at now is the first part, which is given for every unit in the teacher guide. Where are we? Begins with a list of outcomes, as you can see, for unit 2 here. Not sure why I didn't choose a unit 1 but so you can see the list of outcomes followed in the same order as they're delivered in the student book. And then we highlight the main competencies that are covered in these units. And just to give you one example in a bit more detail of these, as for competency, is that 3? Critical and inventive thinking. We break these down and we focus on a certain element of the competency. So here the focus is using context clues to aid understanding and to help students work out meaning. Can we go to the next slide now, please, Julia? Thank you. So a new feature of the teacher guide is a table, and there'll be one of these for each unit in the teacher guides that set out the coverage for each unit for 1, 2, or 3 weeks of teaching time. We've assumed 1 hour of English a day, but obviously you can adapt that as you need to for your schools. And these give brief suggestions on what student book and workbook content to do in each lesson and work through the units in the order that content is presented in the students' books. One request that was repeated several times on my visit to Belize last year from several teachers was that they'd find it useful to have some idea or be told, given some suggestions on where to use the workbook content. And if you're familiar with the workbooks, you'll know they're set out in a skills chapters rather than in a unit by unit basis as the student book is. So what we've done in this table is included suggestions of when to cover which workbook pages for each unit in the student books. They are just suggestions, you don't have to follow them, but the aim of this is to hopefully save you the job of going through the workbooks every time you need to find supportive content for the student books. Generally you can take these tables to be suggestions for you. They're optional, you don't need to use them. If you've been using the Language Tree series and you're confident in doing it, you may just want to dip in and out of these. If you're new to teaching or new to using the series, you might find them more useful in informing your own planning. Can we have the next slide, please, Julia? Thank you. So this is an example of what the majority content in the teacher guide looks like. It sets out teaching notes that support every section in the student book. And as Julia mentioned, and as you'll know, in the student books, there are on-page teacher notes. And what's in the teacher guide is designed to complement these on-page teacher notes and to develop them, giving you extra guidance where needed. So for an example, they might give suggestions on how to deliver the material in the student book. They might give you extra activities or questions you may want to ask to lead into an activity. There are regular support and extension boxes, features that you can see here. The aim for these is for you to use them as you need to tailor your teacher guide or your teaching to the specific abilities of your students. So for support, you may see a suggestion for students to work on a reduced part of an exercise, or it may say they could answer orally rather than in writing. For extension, an idea would be for them to produce an additional sentence, perhaps for a later grade student, standard 1 onwards, you might ask them to write several sentences or even a paragraph rather than notes, which you'd expect from some other students. Looking at the 3rd bullet point then, we can see the same icon that was in the student book teacher notes. Here we've got C7 for sustainable development. And what these do is they mirror the competencies as they're set out in the student books and give you a bit more information on how to deliver them. So this example, in the student book, the question is asked, how well did students appreciate that we can all help to look after our environment? And in the teacher guide, we can see how we expand on this by asking students to talk about how their actions can help make a difference in protecting the environment. And this could perhaps be extended to give themselves personal targets on this, such as reducing plastic waste, making suggestions in the home on how they could be more recycling units and so forth. So it's in very small ways, but these small ways build up throughout the series so that you can help deliver the competencies securely. And lastly, when I used to teach, one of my favorite features in teacher guides would be the answers section, because I would like that it saved me a lot of time. So we provide answers in the teacher guides to all of the student book exercises. Sometimes you'll see, as in exercise 1, there are possible answers. If it may be that a student answers in a different way, that's fine. And sometimes we say that where the answers need to be completely open, we just say students will give their own answers, because we don't want to restrict students or suggest a certain way of answering a very open question. Just to note a few other features, for the Infant 1 student book, which isn't set out like the other student books in skills sections of reading, speaking and listening and so forth, the teacher guides do take this approach, and they cover the separate skills covered in the student books, and again in a way that complements the on-page teacher notes. At the end of each teacher guide unit, we provide a list of the workbook pages that were mentioned in the table you saw earlier. These give a bit of extra teacher guidance on how to deliver these pages and the relevant answers to the exercises. At the end of each unit, we also have a reflection on the Now I Can pages. They give a few extra teaching notes and again the answers. And I'm not sure the platform you use for the online teacher guides, but there should also be a section of online tests. There's one for each unit. And these again can be used for additional practice or for formative or even summative assessment of each of the units. And also we supply these answers too. So when you get these, I hope you find them useful. There is a lot of support material available if you need it and if you feel that your students need it. So yeah, I hope you find some use for them. So we've gone through quite a few updates in this section, myself and Julia. If there's anything now you'd like us to expand on or answer questions on, could you please put these in the chat now, and we'll give you a few minutes to do that.
I've got show chat previews. I can't actually see anything else in the chat.
I can see.
So I'm doing the screen share, so it's not showing me the chat.
Yes. I can see a few in the Q&A it's more about the connection though.
Ah.
There will, I believe that this is being recorded. There will be a recording of this, if that helps.
I've got it now. Check the connection, yeah.
Oh, I've just seen another note.
Here I can answer. Good morning. Will we be getting the teacher's guide soon, digital or hard copy? There will not be a hard copy. It's all digital, and I think it's ready, isn't it, to go online, as far as I know?
I think it is too. We might need
the teacher guides have been sent, so should already be or will be very soon being put on the TLI. So you'll be able to see them along with the audio files that are needed for the book.
I'll go back to the beginning and see what a lot of good mornings. Well, it's good afternoon here, but good morning, everybody. Lots of greetings.
Nice to see a few familiar names too. Hello.
Right. I don't know anybody, but I will get to know people.
Yes.
I think so far I've just got that one inquiry about when the teacher's guides will be available. We're getting there. Done. Right. Well, if you do have any questions, please do type them in the chat now, because we'll be able to answer or try to answer them. Yeah, I had some problems. I'm in finally. That's good to know.
Okay, I mean, we could move on if no one has.
I'm almost. Hang on.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's the message from Macmillan Caribbean about who should be able to get in. Oh, somebody said they've been kicked out. Oh
dear.
Yeah, sounds terrible. You don't want to kick anybody out. Yeah.
Any questions like that, I've been trying to respond to people on the chat, so I'll keep doing so. And I think the teachers' guides are now available to download on the TLI, so that's definitely
So
definitely on there.
the login will be circulated, will it, for how to access them?
Yes, the teachers should be able to access them on the TLI. They'll be able to have access to that.
Right. Okay, well,
Oh, just a question from Marsha. Hi, Marsha. For the lower division, students will be getting a workbook as well as the students' book. Yes.
yes, we are providing workbooks at lower division. So the students will have a workbook and a student book. I'd have to say that we are currently working on the middle division, aren't we? And hoping before the end of the year to start on the upper division. So it's all good progress. Well, if there's no more questions, I think we should probably move on to the next. I think we're going to move into competencies.
Yes, and just another one. The audios should be available on your TLI as well. If they're not yet, they should be very soon. They've all been supplied. Oh, okay. I can see that someone's replied that they're not. The audio files aren't available.
Oh,
Perhaps that's a point we can pass on.
yeah. Well, I think that Willen will sort that one out if we know
Yeah.
they're not there. Yeah. I mean, they are ready. So
They've definitely been sent, so they should be available if they're not already. I'll check this for
yeah,
you.
okay, it's something you can check.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Shall we move on? Ready to go?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
If there are any other questions, just keep putting them in and we'll,
Yeah.
if we don't answer them in the webinar, we'll find out for you as soon as we can. I think part of it is almost, as far as we know, the books have been delivered, but it's when you get them now is not necessarily up to us, unfortunately.
Yeah, if we could deliver them on a magic carpet, we would do so. Right.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Just to take one more, Julia. Thanks, Saminia. So far, the books seem more interesting and extremely relevant. That's brilliant.
Oh,
However, should we start using them at this point? We only have approximately 8 to 9 weeks of classes left for the school year.
that's really up to local advisors, I think.
I'd agree. I mean, and if you've got anything else you've been told to cover, you might need to check with your schools.
I think that's got to be a school policy. I mean, my having got these lovely books ready, I mean, my inclination would be to start as soon as possible. But I mean, if you're partway through Language Tree second edition, it is quite easy to transfer from that into the MyBZ Language Tree, because we followed very much the same pattern. We've adapted the units. You will find that 1 or 2 units are completely new, but most of them are very much the same, but with a new focus. So say you're working on Unit 10 in the old book, you should be able to move on in the new book. But that really is a question for your schools and your advisors. Anything else? Or
I think, oh, just another one from Shirley. Oh, sorry, I've lost it. The new curriculum does not reflect this workbook. However, the old curriculum does reflect the content of this book. Do you mean specifically the workbook? What maybe it would be useful to know the grade, because certainly for infant 1, there is more phonics content, which we're not really covering in as much detail because you've got the separate phonics series. I'm not sure that's specific enough for you.
I'm not quite sure. Yeah, let's have a look at the question and see. Let's chat. Is this my school? My school is still using the first edition. Oh, right. I can't see that one about the one you were looking at about the was it based on the curriculum? What was the wording of that again?
Maybe that's the only comment I have, is that the new curriculum does not reflect this workbook. However, the old curriculum does reflect the content of this book.
Right, and we don't know which level we're talking about. Is this in infant 1 or
I'm not sure, sorry. Oh, there's new messages.
new messages? Hang on, let's see what they are.
No, it's quite hard to keep up. Oh, infant 1, thank you, Shirley.
Infant 1, okay. Right. Well, it actually, the workbooks are not designed to follow an order of a curriculum at all, but they are designed in a way that they are skill-based. So if you want some extra work on, well, for example, what we were looking at just now, which is using a or an, you would go to the workbook and you can find some extra support exercises in there. When we first wrote Language Tree, we had the workbook worked alongside the student book. The student book unit was on a theme and had grammar content, and then the workbook had a unit by unit approach. Whereas now we've gone into open skills, so you'll find that you've got a section on language, a section on reading comprehension, and so on. So it doesn't follow any particular order. It's a resource book, really.
And there are suggestions on, as I said, in the table in the teacher guide for where you could use each page in the workbook. So hopefully that'll give you some indication of where to match things up. If you wanted then to focus on certain elements which are more prevalent in the new curriculum, that's completely up to you.
Yeah. I've seen quite a few about delivery of books. They don't get them on time. Well, yeah, I really sympathise with you for that. But that is actually beyond the control of the authors and the trainers. That's something you would have to take up locally, I'm afraid.
Okay, I think if we should move on, if that's all right with everyone.
Time to move on. Yeah.
So the next part of the presentation is mainly focused on the competencies. This shift in the curriculum is something I've seen in several education reform projects I've worked on, not necessarily for competencies, but moving from a more traditional approach of teaching to something more holistic can be, it seemed for me, a very big challenge for teachers, especially if they're not given much support in it. So I'd like to reassure you, first of all, Julia and I both feel, and we've talked to Leonie about this, we're almost quite lucky in language arts because we feel these competencies are quite deeply embedded already in the series, especially some of them to do with communication, collaboration, emotional intelligence. They're skills that when you think about them, they're so deeply embedded in the language arts curriculum already. All we need to do is almost extract them in a different way, rather than think we have to take a completely different approach to our teaching. They're already there. We just have to perhaps focus on them differently. So for language arts, as well as teaching the skills that we still have in the curriculum, reading, comprehension, and so forth, we now need to build in this teaching of the 7 competencies. So to answer the first question, why follow a competency-based curriculum? A big part of the answer is we are required to from moving forwards, but there are lots of benefits to this approach. For me, a big aim of this is, I feel, we're moving away from the traditional style of teaching just to pass a test or to impart specific information which students can then regurgitate and use, but I feel it used to be many decades ago a little more superficial. And when I was learning to become a teacher myself and doing my teacher training, the focus then was called learning to learn. And I think in some ways the competency-based approach has some similarities to this. What we're also doing as teachers is helping our students take control of their learning, understand their learning, understand when they are being emotionally intelligent, understand how they are expanding their communication skills. And the aim of this is by the time they leave their education, they are equipped to work with these 7 competencies in their schooling, but also in their wider world, in their communities, in their jobs, to become useful citizens, global citizens who can contribute to society. So it's quite a big ask, but we can break this down. So to look at the second question, how I can deliver a competency-based curriculum. A big part of this for me, again, is thinking what this big concept, each of these competencies, this big concepts, these are, how they can be broken down, especially when we're talking for the lower division. And just to remember, at the lower division, it's the very start of this process, which will continue right through your students' education. It's identifying these competencies, picking out small foci of them that we can help students develop as they move through the stages. And remember, what you introduce in the lower division will be reinforced again and again and built upon as the students move through their education. So I mentioned a few of the competencies that Julia, Leonia, and I feel are embedded in all of the language arts units and books of emotional intelligence and communication, critical and inventive thinking, tricky to say, and collaboration. So even though these books were written before we had this competency-based curriculum, they are present in the series and can therefore be taught through it, through the language arts books, without you needing anything else. While some of them, especially, for example, digital literacy in the lower division, aren't as easy to cover, we do pick up on them where they appear in the units, and they will be integrated more further as we move through the grades. Obviously, there are some requirements about digital literacy, some practical requirements you may have to overcome as teachers. We can just give suggestions there. So I think, again, it's not that we're looking at a completely different type of curriculum or approach. We're looking at how to use the resources we've just adapted for you in a way that makes our teaching maybe more explicit or more based on this competency-based approach and this holistic approach we want students to follow. So we'll do a few examples in more detail shortly, but this really got me thinking how I use the competencies myself in my life and how part of that has come through using them or being taught them in school and using them throughout my life. So for example, just over the last few days, it's the Easter holiday break here as well. So I help look after my niece and nephew some days, which is very lovely. But because I work from home as a freelancer, it often involves a lot of reorganizing of my workload so that I can be with them and, you know, we can spend quality time together. Also, they do a lot of extracurricular activities, so I need a lot of planning in these few days. I was thinking with regards to communication, the very simple point of my niece being 12 and my nephew being 9 means if I tell them the same thing, I need to communicate that message in a very different way so that I'm understood. And that made me think about how the many ways we communicate as teachers. They often don't like doing the same thing. So one does one thing, one does the other thing. And I have to be quite creative in my thinking to keep them occupied, especially if I need to work. And another thing which I find really rewarding is what they teach me. They've been doing a lot in school on sustainable development. So they're taking me on a litter picking walk one of these days. Hopefully it won't be raining, we'll have to see. But I thought that's a lovely way of showing how they use sustainable development or focus of that competency in their everyday lives and can promote it to me. So I'm also learning as well as teaching, which I thought was a nice element of this. So could you just have a minute take a minute and think of something you did today that involves one or more of the competencies and put a note in the chat, please, because I'd love to see what you think of this and how relevant you think it is to your own lives as well as your teaching. Does anyone want to put a note in the chat about that?
I think they're thinking.
I think some people are having a problem with digital literacy element of this. I'm sorry you're having so much trouble either entering or being able to stay in the webinar. Oh, thanks, Anna. That's good to know. Some of the activities you noticed are aligned. So yeah, what we hope to do in the rest of this seminar is go through and show you some examples of this.
Anything else in the chat? Ah, right.
Okay. Well, let's move on then if no one has anything else, but please keep adding things. So what we're going to do next is look at each of the competencies in a bit more detail, how they're presented in the lower division language arts books and how you can deliver them as teachers. As you can see, here's the first slide on this, and we've included a page from the student book so that you can see practically how to integrate these elements in your own teaching. And please do try this when you're back in the classroom, when you do get your books. We'd love to know if you're able to try some out before May, when Julia and I come out, we'd love to know how they've worked for you. So for the first competency, just to point out, we feel that in a way, some of these competencies can be, again, quite big concepts, almost overwhelming. So we've broken some of them down into more than one area. So students develop an appreciation for each person as special and worthy of respect. Students understand that each person may grow and develop in different, unique ways. This is from Infant 1 from the student book. And so we're focusing here on the more of the character development area of the competency. Sorry, I'm being a little distracted. It's great to see a few more comments. Thank you for saying you collaborated with other colleagues and teachers, how everything connects to real life situations. So that's good to know. So in this story, just to give you a bit of background, if you're not familiar with this one, Tom and Kim, the brother and sister, they help their parents. We read through the story, we see these examples on this page of what Tom does to help. And then at the bottom of the page, you can see these two students discussing how this theme relates to their own life and how they help at home. So after your students discuss how they can help, they could perhaps talk about how it feels to help other people, how it feels to be thanked for helping, or to be told they've done a good job on something, and to think about all the people who help them in their lives. You might want to expand this by asking students to think about how they help in the school or in the classroom or even in the community with any brothers or sisters. Perhaps if they don't help, they could think about ways in which they could help in the future. So this whole discussion bases something that's started in the textbook, uses that to get students to think about how they relate to their own lives, how that it is good to help others, and hopefully better appreciate those people who help them. In terms of assessing, I wouldn't say assessing in a very summative way here. I'd be more thinking how I, as a lower division teacher, could monitor this progress. So perhaps some of the pairs who are having their discussions could share their answers as the class. You could praise some of the ideas they had. And it gives you an idea of how far they've understood this concept. And perhaps if you needed to, you could ask further questions to develop their thinking. You could even perhaps decide as a class to take on one of these ideas. Every student will remember to just say thank you to the next person who helps them, or to look for more ways to help other people. So this gives you an idea, hopefully, of how a competency that's embedded in a story becomes the basis of students thinking about how this reflects to their own lives in just a very small way. But a small beginning is all we need really at this level. And we will keep building upon this throughout this, throughout a certain grade and throughout the whole series. And just to look at the second question at the bottom of the slide that's on your screen right now. I'm currently writing the teacher guides for middle division. This is one of your books, Julia. So I was looking at the unit about road safety when the little boy is told not to cross the road or go to see his friend on his own, but he does so. And I thought that what an important lesson, life lesson, is in that story that should really be impressed for our students. So there's a lot of ways you can use to draw out these competencies in small ways, but in important ways. And just check the comments again. Oh, that's some great comments on how it's nice to see real life situations. Sorry, it's moving quite quickly. There's so many people joined. Oh, interesting about pointing on how you can relate to other subjects. That's a really good point. Okay. If we could move on, Julia, to the next slide, please. Thank you. So our next competency of emotional intelligence and communication skills. Students understand their own and others' emotions and how they may affect interpersonal relationships, and students effectively communicate in a variety of ways. So this one's a speaking and listening example from Standard 1. This story was Softball in the Yard, really nice little story where they're told not to play in the yard. The mother doesn't want her pots broken or knocked over. The children play anyway and the pots get broken. So we've got an area of emotional intelligence here, because what the students are asked to do is role play to consider how Tanya and her mother would have felt as characters in the story, which is a lovely way of encouraging students to think about how other people may feel in certain situations, or indeed how they felt if they've ever been in a similar situation. I particularly like this one because at the end of the story, which we see just before we move on to speaking and listening, Tanya also, she makes the situation a bit worse, and she tells her mother it wasn't her, the cat knocked over the pot. So there's lots of things you can do with this about developing emotional intelligence, what Tanya should have done, perhaps what Tanya's mother does when she finds out. So it's a really nice one you can develop. Just to look at the second point of this, communication. I really enjoy when, I'd be quite happy modeling role play as a teacher. I quite enjoy things like that, but it made me think about if students are reluctant, how you could help them with this, and or perhaps give them different ways to do that. So maybe at first they're even just having a think, they're thinking about how they would be as Tanya, how they would be feeling, what they might want to do next to make the situation better. So it can be, again, in a very small way that you then draw out, hopefully as much as you can draw out from the students. You may also want to think about how you pair students for something like this. Perhaps you pair them quieter students with more confident speakers. Perhaps you let them choose who they work with for this. Perhaps you pair up students deliberately who don't normally work together. And that gives you a way of them developing their communication skills to different people. So they're working on the competency while they're working towards the skill. Yeah, so next slide, please, Julia. Thank you. For this one, for me, when I used to work with teachers, especially in certain other countries, I feel that this competency and this skill of writing, especially creative writing, is one of the ones they found most challenging, possibly because they were used to working in a quite a teacher-led didactic way, and that was less creative. And I know myself, if I need to write a letter or a story as an example, I can be thinking about it and almost planning it in my head. But when I look at the blank page or blank computer screen, my head goes empty and I can't start it. I need to break that task down. And that made me think of how the writing process we follow throughout the language arts series does that exact same thing. And to that end, I'd like to read these. And I'm sure a lot of you have noticed the K on the word think isn't visible, which just shows how important the writing process is, because I should have proofread this one more time. So apologies for that. So here, students develop their ability to think critically in order to make reasoned judgments or solve problems. They are able to think creatively and use their imaginations. And our example also for writing, I think this one's from Infant 2. This is us working on a class story, which is a really lovely challenge. I say challenge, it can be challenging as a teacher to manage the writing of a class story, but it is very rewarding because it means that every student, even if they couldn't think of an original idea, they're able to develop other students' ideas and be involved in the process. So for this task, I might just briefly remind the students of the story in which someone wrecks the toy dog in the school fete, and then presumably takes him home and has other adventures with him, which is what the story we could write as a class could be about. So the students can work through the questions as set out in exercise 1. perhaps if you needed to, you could ask more specific questions such as who won Rex the dog? Was it a boy or a girl? What grade were they in? And so forth. And then start gathering together these ideas, which is the first stage of the writing process. So lots of success criteria are also here. You'd be plotting these perhaps on the board and then turning the ideas, maybe choosing the class favorites and turning that into a short story. So all students are ideally engaged in the process of choosing what they like best or adapting the ideas, even if, as I mentioned, they didn't think of an idea in the first place. And the last one from me, if you can move on, Julia. Thank you. Just have a quick look at the messages. Okay, some really lovely comments. Sorry, I probably won't be able to read or go through all of them. But I think it's really valuable to allow students to compare what they see in these stories to what they do in real life and learn from them. So for collaboration, I think probably the one that our students do in most of our language art lessons to some extent. So they work interdependently in a variety of different situations and with different people. And again, we've got a writing example from Standard 1. Here we go. So students, they read the story earlier where Crocodile and Monkey were growing some vegetables. Monkey was being a bit crafty. He was getting all the delicious vegetables to eat while Crocodile was left with the roots or the leaves and wasn't getting very much at all. So Crocodile opens his mouth wide. We wonder if he's going to eat Monkey, but he doesn't. He's his friend. So he says, Monkey, you know, you're not being fair. We need to share everything. Monkey realizes he's being selfish and changes, and they share everything from now on. So there's a lovely story to start off with that you could use as the basis for this writing task, shown through these pictures in the student book writing, which are a lovely way of inspiring students to start thinking about their planning, because here you've already got the beginning, middle, and end of a short story. So for this one, I was going to do a quick task with you, wondering if we could do a bit of shared writing, but I'm appreciative that I'm running on a bit, which is one of my personal areas for development. So I'll leave it there. And if there's any other questions for me, I'll try and pick them up and notice them as Julia goes through the next few competencies for us to discuss at the end. So thank you very much for listening.
Right, go on to the next one. Right, so here we're talking about multicultural appreciation, and this is focused at infant 2 level. So it's got to be focused largely in the student's own environment because they're still quite young and not able to see the wider world. And so this unit is all about the town and the community, and it talks about the different places in the town, the school, the store, the clinic, and the people who work there and what they do and how they help and how they work together. So the approach is in the competencies, the students sort of develop appreciation of their own and different cultures. They understand that differences between cultures make them special and should be celebrated and respected. So the aim of the working on these reading passages is really to develop the idea of community and the fact that people within a community may be very different and that they all make a valuable contribution. So you can tackle this with the students and talk about their community and compare it with this community here, and you know, who contributes in different ways. And that can also be applied to the school community, but who works in different areas and how everybody contributes. So it's very much done at the level of the infant 2 child. But you can see that even though it's a very big concept, you can start to introduce it at this level, and then it will be developed as we go on and picked up again and developed further in the middle and upper division. Digital literacy. This is really introduced only gradually at this stage because it will become more important later on. Digital technology, the detail of the competencies, the students understand how using a range of digital technologies can benefit their learning in everyday lives. And students are aware of how to protect themselves when using digital technology. At this stage, we're really looking at communication through digital sources. And this is from a student book, the Standard 1 book. And it's a unit which looks at different forms of communication. And it starts off with this listen up, which is a listening exercise, short listening exercise. And there's a message read to the students, which is actually a voicemail message, which somebody's left, you know, for the student listens to this and works out the answers, who the message is for, who was speaking, and why the message was left. That's the start. And then we move into other forms of communication, like a letter to read, and followed up by a discussion of using texts and emails. So the student can become aware of these things and discuss how they can be used, and how you would use different types of messaging for, you know, for different situations. Like a voicemail will be for, you know, somebody to make an appointment, or to, you know, just a quick call. Whereas a letter is a very much formal thing. So really the outcome, the competency here is, do your students know how to use different forms of technology to communicate? We're assuming that at this stage, and we hope and pray, they're not starting to use social media and other more sophisticated topics, which we will have to deal with later on, because these are very important for young people today, that they do know how to use this kind of technology. But just showing you how even at a very simple level you can develop, start to develop the competencies. And the seventh competency is understanding of an advocacy for sustainable development. We've already looked at sustainable development quite a lot, and this is actually bringing it in at a very basic level. This is an infant 1 page, which is all about how flowers are grown, what they need, what plants need to grow. They need to have water and air and light. And the outcome here is that students understand how important plants are as part of, you know, for our planet. So there are students understand what sustainable development is, how they can live more sustainably, and why this is vital to the future of our planet. Well, that's quite a big idea for small children. But we've interpreted it this way, that how well the students appreciate what plants need to grow, and that we get much of our food from plants. And this is something that even the youngest student can understand. And this is part of a section about growing plants, growing food, and what they need. And how well do your students understand the importance of protecting the natural environment? We don't have to talk about protecting the natural environment to them, because they're not at that level of development, but they can all understand how important it is to look after plants and how to grow food. And so we're dealing with it at a very simple level, laying the foundations for what they will study later on when they move on through the books. I think that brings us to the end of our talk about competencies. Before we move on to just a recap at the end, how are we doing with the chat? Have we got anything people want to say, or?
We have a question here. Is this edition of Language Tree designed to be used for the entire school year?
Yes, is the answer to that. Yes, it's a book. The books are for a complete school year. I got a point here that, yes, we perhaps should mention, is a very good point from Arlette, saying that I like the integration of other subjects, because there's a lot of cross-curricular work, and this work about the plants relates to what they might be learning in their science lessons, or even other ones they might be learning those in their social studies groups as well. Anything else we need to address here? One new message.
Oh, where is it? Can I read one from Anna? For me, I believe more than 1 page per outcome is necessary to able to get enough practice in order to see whether or not students are able to write a poem, for an example. It's a really fair point. I think while we do try and build on skills, specific skills within a grade, so perhaps working, say, with poetry in more than one unit within one grade, that is something that's also developed as the students move through grades. So I hope that's useful. I know it doesn't quite deliver what you might want for this one book, and maybe you would need to perhaps find some extra examples to teach certain concepts or things like poetry, which some students find more difficult.
Well, we haven't really been looking at that in this particular presentation because we focus more on how to develop the competencies through the activities in the books. But of course, we do develop skills as such. We develop writing skills, we develop reading skills, and we cover all sorts of things like critical thinking in our comprehension questions. These things have always been there. And if you're talking about writing a poem, there are opportunities in all our books for students to study poems and have a go at writing their own poems. And the same goes for writing stories. I think we saw the story about the monkey and the crocodile. So there's the writing pages, because as Judith said, that is an activity. Creative writing, independent writing, teachers and students find that quite challenging. So we give a very structured approach. That really would be the subject for another workshop, wouldn't it? A workshop absolutely on writing. And
lovely.
Felt that we felt we felt that we would focus on competencies here because that is what's significantly new about your curriculum. Right.
And there would be also perhaps some extra support in the workbook.
Yeah, the specific. Marsha, I recall workbooks that came with KA and KB. These incorporated aspects of the phonics curriculum. Yeah, the infant one workbook includes a lot of materials from, or similar materials to KA and KB. Since the first edition of Language Tree, Belize has developed its own Sounds and Letters phonics course, which I believe is available throughout the country to teachers in schools, and so most of the phonics teaching will be done through that. Language Tree is a language arts book which focuses on the skills of reading, comprehension, language vocabulary development, speaking, listening, and writing. So you do have phonics outcomes in infant 1, but not after that, because the phonics is covered in the Sounds and Letters course. Anything else that's coming? A comment on the revising checklist, that is for the writing.
I like that too. It's very useful. It's very specific.
We do that. That is a very simple. I think that was infant 2, but then that's developed right throughout. So when you move into the middle division, you'll find there's quite a focus on self-assessment and developing responsibility for their own learning. It's a bit premature, I think, at these grades. Can I get any more? Any more questions? Shall we move on to the final slide then?
Sure.
I believe this is the final slide.
Partly the questions.
I'm just going to get rid of that. Well, any questions? Any more questions?
Yeah.
And then try it. What will you try in your classroom?
So we'd love you to try one or several of these out. They don't have to be as we've set them out in this seminar. Just pick a competency, have a think about what you're teaching at the moment and how it applies, and try something in the classroom. And please let us know how it goes. And we'll be back in May to work with you, as many of you as possible, in a bit more detail in the daily workshops.
I would say when you try it in the classroom, you don't have to make it up on your own. You can look into the Language Tree book, my BZ Language Tree, and find an activity which will develop that competency. I think sometimes people feel that, oh, all these things, we've got to look outside the book to develop them. But if you look in the book, you will find that they're all in there, they're embedded in there, and it's just a question of finding them. And our pointers at the bottom of each page points out some of them, not all of them. There'll be plenty more activities you can use to develop the competencies. So you haven't got to go online and find extra activities. They're all there.
And also, as I was doing some of these examples, I thought this could equally teach another of the competencies. So it's not that they're alone in how they're integrated. Also, that they're often embedded in a combined way, which is lovely. Makes it easier, I think, to teach.
Well, it's up to you as teachers to to determine how you use them. We're not providing the only answer or right answer, but we've given suggestions which you can look at and develop.
It's a question, can we get an electronic copy of the student's book? Alice, do you know about that?
I believe we will be able to get that to you. We don't have that at the moment. But obviously you should have your physical copies soon too, if you haven't already.
There's a tick on the back of that cover which says the e-copies are available, but I don't know where
So they'll most likely be on our Macmillan Education Everywhere platform. And we can share details with the teachers once that's available. And there's a comment here about the audios for the TLI, so I'll follow up on that as well to make sure that they're on there as well as the teacher guides, which are already on there. If there's any more questions, please put them in the chat for Judith and Julia.
Well, Judith can look. I realise if I'm looking at the chat, I'm blocking the screen.
No, we can still see your screen, but yeah, that's all for now. Just nice to hear that you'd like to try these things out, that you think they're interesting. We hope you get them really soon if you don't have them already too.
Well, obviously we're prejudiced, but we think the books are lovely.
We are.
I think we're getting some good feedback as well in the chat, so that's great. Thank you so much, Judith and Julia, for presenting the session today. I hope you all found that really, really interesting, lots of takeaways. And I know you'll be looking forward to seeing everyone when you go out in person to Belize in May for the in-person training. So that's very exciting. And there will, when the webinar finishes, there will be a questionnaire or a little area that you can fill out the form. So if there's any additional questions you think of that maybe we haven't covered or you haven't had a chance to put in the chat, do put them in there, and then I'll share them with Julia and Judith, and they can address them for you after the webinar as well. As I said before, this webinar is recorded, so really sorry and apologies to any of your colleagues that weren't able to join. For some reason, the Zoom wasn't allowing any more people to join there. So I'll make sure I circulate the recording as soon as possible, and all your colleagues can listen to the wonderful session as well. So I think that's probably the end of the session now. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day and a lovely Easter as well. Enjoy the rest of your Easter break. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody.
And thank you for participating. It's always lovely to hear your comments. So thanks for your time as well.
Yes, thank you very much for attending. It's been lovely meeting you online, and I look forward to meeting you in person very soon.
Great. Thank you very much then. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.